Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Rigor Mortis podcast. My name is Adam, and if you've guessed right, the man next to me to the right would be Jason.
How are you today, Adam?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm exhausted.
How come?
I've been dog sitting.
Dog sitting.
And they're three dogs with anxiety problems. Holy shit. I slept about an hour and a half last night.
The joys of parenting.
I'm on my fifth cup of coffee, and I've slapped myself in the face before we hit record about 3 times. I'm good. I'm ready.
Be seeing sounds and hearing visuals.
That's right. We just got to get me through this. Keep me upright, man.
Well, I'm glad to be recording. We had to take last week off because we both had kids' birthday parties, but
yeah,
good to be back at it. Definitely
good to be back at it. And you were finding, well, actually, no, you didn't find this one. My brother found this one for us. So thank you, Drew.
Yeah. And today we're going to do the mysterious Chandra Levy case.
Very interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about this one before until Drew had told me about it, and this is something you had, I think, known a little bit about before.
Yeah, I knew a little bit about this one, but basically Chandra Levy, where it starts is she was born in Cleveland, Ohio, to Robert and Susan Levy. The family moved to Modesto, California, where she attended Grace M. Davis High School, and she attended San Francisco State University after that, where she earned a degree in journalism.
She then went on to become an intern for the California State Bureau of Education, and she worked under the mayor of Los Angeles at the time.
Yep, and after that, she went on to the University of Southern California to earn a master's degree in public administration.
As part of her final semester of study, Levy moved to Washington, D.C., so she went back cross-country to become a paid intern with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, where she began an internship in October of the year 2000.
Yeah, so she seems very ambitious. I mean, going from one coast all the way across the country to the other. I mean, she knows what she wants, it seems like.
Definitely a smart young lady that seems like she's got it together.
Yeah, and when she gets over to D.C., she gets assigned to the Public Affairs Division, and her supervisor, Dan Dunn, was very impressed with Chandra's work, especially her handling of media inquiries, mostly regarding the upcoming execution of Timothy McVeigh, who did the Oklahoma City bombing.
Yeah, I remember that when I was a young kid.
Yeah.
Levy's internship was abruptly terminated in April of 2001 because of her academic eligibility was found to have expired in December of 2000. Now, could you tell me a little bit about what that means?
I think that means that she had to be currently enrolled as a student in order to be able to do this internship, but because her academic eligibility had expired, she was already scheduled to graduate in May of that year. The requirements for her internship must have
lapsed.
So she had to go back to California in May for graduation. Now, Chandra doesn't make it that far. She was last seen on May 1st, 2001. The Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C. was first alerted on May 6th because her parents had been trying to reach her for those 5 days, and they hadn't heard from her.
This was unlike Chandra. She was in contact with her family regularly.
Yes, very regularly.
So this immediately set off alarms in their heads.
Yeah. So the police do the normal things. They start calling hospitals, and they visited her apartment, and they didn't find any indication of foul play, but they weren't able to enter her apartment either, due to the landlord's lease and things like that.
Of course. But on May 7th, Levy's father told the police that her daughter had been having an affair with a U.S. congressman. Whoa.
Yeah, from what I had read about this, her parents were very, very suspicious that they hadn't heard from her in the 5 days. So what they did is they started looking at phone records and things like that, and they began seeing this same number over and over and over again, which of course would lead you to suspicions. And I guess Chandra had actually told her mother in the past that she was seeing somebody in the government, but she couldn't be more specific.
I'm sure, yeah. This is got to be one of those things that you've got to keep as hush-hush as possible.
Right. So, a little more research, and they found out that this congressman was U.S. Representative Gary Condit, who actually was from the same district in California that the Levys were from.
I wonder if he had known their family prior to this.
I don't believe so.
No, just by chance, huh?
Right.
The police obtained a warrant on May 10th to conduct a formal search of Levy's apartment. So this has now been, 9 days?
Right.
After the fact? Investigators found her credit cards, identification, and mobile phone left behind in her purse. Now, this is unusual for somebody that's taken off to go cross-country. These are things that she would have brought with her.
Right, and they also found a partially packed suitcases. So, obviously, she, wasn't on her way back across country. So, it would almost seem like I mean, this was 2001, so it was when cell phones were first becoming popular. It isn't like today where you don't leave your house without your cell phone. I mean, she may have left the house without her cell phone, but her purse and credit cards being there, you would think that that meant she wasn't planning on leaving for long, especially not 9 days.
Yeah, the cell phone definitely. I mean, I can't even go to the bathroom without my cell phone.
True story.
I mean, let's be honest here. You know, that's something you don't leave behind.
Well, I don't have Reader's Digest anymore, so we gotta have something to read.
Beats Field and Stream, too. A police sergeant tried to examine Levy's laptop computer, but the files were corrupted, and he wasn't able to...
He actually had inadvertently corrupted the internet data. So they had somebody who didn't really know what they were doing searching her computer. Not a smart idea.
That's not smart at all.
Now, also with that, her answering machine was full. Yeah, those, if you don't know what that is.
Mine is too.
If you don't know what an answering machine is now, people would call you, and if you weren't there, they'd leave a voice message for you.
Yeah, but that's a common thing. I mean, we have them on our cell phones. Mine's been, backed up for years now because I just don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't want you to leave me messages.
I don't want a message either, yeah.
My car's extended warranty has expired, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, right, exactly. So after the police had accidentally corrupted the files on her computer, it had taken experts almost a month to be able to correct everything and see what kind of information was on her computer. Now, there was some interesting information, right, Jason?
Yeah, on the morning of May 1st, the last day she was seen or talked to, she had websites. She had searched for websites related to Amtrak, Baskin Robbins, Gary Condit, the guy she was having the affair with, Southwest Airlines, and a weather report from the Washington Post. So this can be explained to me. I mean, she's probably
planning a trip back out west.
Yep, she might want to take the train to the airport and trying to find out if Southwest Airlines has cheap tickets for her, and also what the weather would be like at the time she's flying out. Pretty simple.
Now, her final search. This is what's kind of interesting. This was at 12:59 p.m. Okay. This was of a province in France.
Yeah, I don't understand what that was all about.
Maybe an interest. I was actually looking up something in Canada the other day, just out of interest. You can easily explain that, right?
Yeah, I would hate for the people to look at my search history. They're going to be mighty confused and mighty creeped out at the same time.
A particular search at 11:33 a.m. was for information about Rock Creek Park in the Washington Post Entertainment Guide. Then at 11:34, she clicked a link to bring up a map of the park. Detectives later theorized that she might have met someone at the Pierce Klingel mansion, which housed the park's headquarters. So it's just one of those... I
think this is a very big park, and there's probably a building in the middle that is like an information building or something like that, is what I would assume. Never been there, but that's what my guess would be.
That's what it kind of sounded like to me, too.
Yeah. And on July 25th, 2001, 3 D.C. police sergeants and 28 police cadets searched along Glover Road in the park, but failed to find any evidence related to Levy. They also searched a second time later on, and they found nothing. Now, what I find interesting about this is, from what I had read, the police detectives... they only searched a certain area of the park, and they told them not to search more than 100 yards off of the roadways.
Interesting.
That doesn't make much sense. Why wouldn't you just grid everything, search everything?
That way you can at least say you did.
Right, absolutely. And, of course, this is over almost 2 months after now, and her parents start holding vigils and news conferences and things like that, trying to keep Chandra's name out there and, rally the troops to bring her home.
But nothing came of this.
No.
And she's never been seen since.
No. And that's where the controversy comes in. I mean, the controversy kept growing and growing due to the news media's obsession with the affair. Now, this Gary Condit guy, the representative that she was with, he was a married man who, like I said, represented the district which her family resided. He actually denied at first that he had an affair with Chandra, but police stated that later on he wasn't a suspect, and after time he actually stopped being so evasive about it like he was at the beginning and actually admitted that he was having an affair with Chandra. I
mean, you can almost explain that. He's not throw out the side that he's a congressman. He's a married man having an affair.
Yeah, and it was July 7th that he admitted to law enforcement that he was having the affair. So that was May, June, July, almost 2 months after, 2.5 months after. So
I mean, this is marriage ending type information. So
yeah, absolutely.
You can see why
and career possibly. I mean, he's a congressman. I mean, need we look to Bill Clinton to find out what an affair will do for your political career?
Very true. Very true. You know what I mean? Now, Condit described her to the police as a vegetarian who avoided drinking and smoking. So, we all know people like that.
Yeah, I don't see how that's relevant at all.
Me neither, but hey, whatever. He thought that Levy was going to return to Washington, D.C. after her graduation and was surprised to find out that the lease on her apartment had ended. I don't think that's that surprising. I mean, the lease is ending. She's going back home. Hey, that's kind of tying up loose ends, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, even if she came back, she may have been looking to move to a different area or something like that. But, of course, since he admitted this affair, investigators are going to look at him a little more closely. And they do a search of Gary's apartment on July 10th. They also questioned flight attendant Anne-Marie Smith, who also claimed that Condit had told her that she didn't need to speak to the FBI about his personal life. So they began investigating him for obstruction of justice. Now, this flight attendant was also involved in an affair with Gary Condit.
Interesting.
But she didn't know Chandra in any way.
This guy is just sleeping with everybody, huh?
Yeah, and of course he's getting pissed off about this, and he's getting more upset about the leaks to the media, and he actually refuses to submit to a polygraph test by the D.C. police at this time, and later on his attorney asserted that he had passed the test administered by a privately hired examiner on July 13th. So if he's willing to take one for a private examiner, why is he not willing to take one for the FBI?
Yeah, but whose private examiner? Is it his private examiner? Is it somebody that he hired?
Exactly.
He said, administer this test on me so we can release this information to the public.
I don't put much stock in that because I don't think anybody should ever take a polygraph.
I'm with you on that, too.
Nothing to gain.
Right. Everything to lose, if anything.
Absolutely.
Of course. He avoided answering direct questions during a televised interview on August 23rd with news anchor Connie Chung on the ABC News program Primetime. I love that show.
Yeah, and this is one of the biggest stories in the United States at this time. And what's weird is not a lot of people remember it because very shortly after this case was consistently in the news is when the September 11th attacks happened. And, of course, that took over
everything.
The 24-hour news cycle for really a couple of years, honestly.
Totally squashed it.
Yeah.
Now, on March 5th of the year 2002, Condit lost the Democratic Party's election for a congressional seat to his former aide.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe this kind of he lost focus on things, or maybe people didn't miss what he had potentially been involved in, and that was enough to get him unseated.
Yeah, a lot of people said that the controversy of these affairs is definitely a contributing factor in him losing his seat, and he was actually subpoenaed to appear on April 1st, 2002 before a D.C. grand jury that was investigating the disappearance. So, early on he was not looked at very very hard, but they definitely got some questions for him now.
And they did keep a lot of things secret because this date was guarded to avoid further leaks.
Yeah, because he was upset that all the leaks that were happening before, so he wanted to be much more tight-lipped about things at that point.
His term ends up coming to a closure on January 3rd of the year 2003.
Right.
No, on May 22nd of 2002, around 9:30 a.m., skeletal remains matching Levy's dental records were discovered by a man walking his dog looking for turtles in Rock Creek Park near Broad Branch Creek, so kind of by a watery area.
Yeah, and this is obviously an area that they hadn't searched before.
This is in the same park.
Same park, yeah. This is the area they looked. This is the area that she had last researched. There's no reason why they shouldn't have looked harder in this area.
They maybe could have found her that day.
They very well could have. I mean, who's to say she didn't hurt herself and die in the elements because they didn't look hard enough? But they do find the bones and personal items scattered about, but they weren't buried, so they're assuming that wildlife had probably got to him a little bit. But they found a sports bra, a sweatshirt, leggings, and tennis shoes, which were among the evidence that was recovered. And from what I had read, the leggings that she wore were actually tied in a knot at the bottom.
What do you mean? Like tied at the ankles?
Yeah, right.
Huh. That's weird.
That is weird. So they don't really know what's up with that. Of course, when you find just skeletal remains, it's much harder to find cause of death and things like that. But they had previously searched over half of this park, which is a huge park. I mean, the park itself is 1,754 acres. So, half of that is going to take you a very long time to search, but you got to do it.
Yeah, when there's a missing woman, you got to search everything.
Right.
I mean, my opinion.
Yeah, and the police commanders had ordered the search perimeters of 100 yards of each road, but I guess some people had misunderstood the directions, and they were only searching within 100 yards of every road.
Well, that cuts that short.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Right.
The remains were found about 4 miles from her apartment, so not far.
No, not at all. And of course, at this time, people are speculating that Gary may have something to do with this. He's having an affair with her. He has, things to lose, I guess you'd say.
He definitely has motive to have been involved.
Right.
Right. That's what I'd say. Now, after a preliminary autopsy was performed, D.C. police announced that there was sufficient evidence to open a homicide investigation. Of course, right? And on May 28th, D.C. medical examiner Jonathan Arden officially declared Levy's death a homicide. So now it's going to be handled as such.
Yeah, he said there's less to work with here than I'd like, and it's possible we'll never know specifically how he died. But he did find damage to her hyoid bone, which suggests possible strangulation. But he didn't deem this to be conclusive evidence of the cause of death. So, like we said, with the pants being tied, that may have had something to do with strangling her, would be my assumption.
Hey guys, we want to take a moment to tell you about this new exciting game that we've been playing called Best Fiends. Now, true crime is our passion, but even we need the occasional break. So when we need that mental palate cleanser, our go-to for a refresher is Best Fiends. Let me tell you what, I was super excited when they approached us in regards to sponsoring our podcast because I'd been playing Best Fiends for months.
Now, I've only been playing this for a few weeks since you told me about it, but I really enjoy how challenging the puzzles are, and it helps keep my brain fresh for all of the information we have to take in while recording the podcast.
This game is definitely challenging, Jason. You got that right. And a lot of fun to play. So engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must play. So do yourself a favor like Jason and I have and download Best Fiends for free. It's a great game. We definitely think you'll enjoy. Again, check out Friends without the R. Best Fiends. Download it today. On June 6, after the police completed their search, private investigator hired by her family found the shin bone with some twisted wire around 25 yards away from the remains. So what I'm saying is, could that, even though it's been separated, it probably was dragged out by animals, but there was something wrapped around her leg.
But here's what's interesting. They find these original bones, or skull bones and things like that.
How come they didn't find everything in the original search?
Within 25 yards.
It's right there.
Right there. That's not far at all. You should be searching much further than 25 yards. And from what I had read, this wasn't even covered by leaves or anything. Her shin bone was just sticking up. Very, very easy to see if you were in the area looking for something like that. So some people actually speculate that the bone was put there after the search had concluded.
And what's kind of interesting is that the police chief just comes out and says that it's unacceptable that these items were not located, but kind of left it at that and brushed it underneath the carpet.
Yeah, obviously very unacceptable. You should have found them when you found the other bones. But this whole case, from everything that I've read, is just shoddy police work after shoddy police work. I mean, they were not doing a good job at all. And
when you have these cases that are handled so loosely like this, it does leave a lot of room for conspiracy to come up.
Right.
Unfortunately.
And of course, at this point in time, most people are thinking Gary Condit probably had something to do with it. But in September of 2001, D.C. police and federal prosecutors were contacted by the lawyer of an informant held in a D.C. jail who claimed to have knowledge of who Chandra's killer was. The informant, who wanted his identity protected for his safety, said that a man named Ingmar Gendike, who's a 20-year-old illegal immigrant from El Salvador, who's also being held in the jail, told this informant that Gary Condit had paid him $25,000 to kill Levy.
Interesting. Now, what's interesting is that they were able to rule out Condit from this attack because Gendike had admitted to assaulting 2 other women in this park prior.
Yeah, in the same area where Chandra's remains were found. There was a woman who said she was jogging in the park, and as she jogs by this guy, she has her headphones in and she keeps jogging, but she feels like somebody's behind her. And she keeps jogging, and eventually she gets to the point where she's like, I'm just going to let this guy pass. And when she goes to let him pass, he grabs her from behind and holds a knife to her throat and was trying to rob her, but she fought back and he ended up running off. And that happened with another woman as well. So, he obviously has a history of assaulting people in this park. So, saying that Condit was involved with Chandra wouldn't make much sense if he did the other two women and Condit wasn't involved. I mean,
right. Just kind of his MO.
Right. He is. I would think he would be a suspect at this point.
Of course, and he also failed to show up for work on the day of Levy's disappearance, which is also kind of a red flag too.
Yeah, and then his landlord recalled that his face appeared scratched and bruised around that same time that Chandra went disappearing. So it would stand to reason that if he were to attack her, maybe a fight broke out, maybe he accidentally killed her, maybe he killed her on purpose, but it would definitely seem like he might have something to do with this.
Now, investigators on this case did not interview the other Rock Creek Park victims.
Which is stupid.
Yeah.
More shoddy police work. I mean, why would you not interview other people who have, a similar situation as to what they believe happened to Chandra?
I know, right? That is kind of weird. Man, they are dropping the ball left and right on this one, in my opinion.
Right, absolutely. And the police chief avoided calling Gandike a suspect and described him as just a person of interest and told reporters to not make too big a deal out of him, even though if he had been considered a suspect, the D.C. police would have been on him like flies on honey.
Oh, I'm sure. Like, they've been on everything so far in this story.
Oh, yeah, doing great police work.
Now, he's being held at a U.S. penitentiary in Victorville for assaults against two other women in Rock Creek.
Yeah, and however, he does deny attacking Chandra, and on November 28th, the FBI had the informant take a polygraph test, which he failed. So this guy who they are relying on to give him this information doesn't seem to be being truthful. But again, like we said with polygraphs, doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, from what I understand, if you're nervous, that can be enough to trip it.
I would be nervous just taking a polygraph.
Yeah. Just being
You could ask me if I assassinated JFK when I wasn't born until 20 years later, and I'd be like, oh, shit.
And probably fail it.
Yeah, probably. Now, what's interesting is they actually did a polygraph on Gandike after the informant failed, and the results on his came back inconclusive, and this is more great police work. They were inconclusive, but were officially ruled not deceptive, and the reason for that is because neither the informant nor Gandike was fluent in English, and they had somebody who wasn't bilingual administer the polygraphs.
Only in America.
Only in America.
When the judge was asked about Gandike's potential connection to Levy's homicide, she responded, "This is such a satellite issue. To me, it doesn't have anything to do with this case."
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, she did sentence Gandike to 10 years in prison for the other attacks on the two women, and he was sent to the U.S. Penitentiary Big Sandy near Inez, Kentucky. But what's interesting is how can she say this has no connection when the M.O. seems to be the same? The guy, shows up or misses work and then shows up at his house after Chandra's disappearance with scratches all over his face. You can't say this has nothing to do with it. You can say you don't think it does, but there's evidence there.
There's evidence there, but maybe there wasn't enough evidence there, you think?
But you can't say it has nothing to do with it. Definitely can't say that.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. And her homicide has been added to the cold case list up until 2006.
Yeah, and that's when they got a new police chief, Kathy L. Lanier, succeeded the D.C. police chief Ramsey, and she replaced the lead detective on the case with 3 veteran investigators who had more homicide experience. In 2007, the editors of the Washington Post assigned a new team of reporters to take a year to re-examine Chandra's case, and the resulting series of articles published in the summer of 2008 focused on the past failure of police to fully investigate Gandike's connection to the attacks. And investigators also searched Gandike's federal prison cell in California and actually found a photo of Chandra that he had saved from a magazine.
Oh, shit.
Now, why would he do that?
Why would he do that? That's fucking weird, dude.
That is very weird.
This guy, they really got to take a closer look at him.
Definitely. And, they did interview acquaintances of his and witnesses of the other Rock Creek Park incidents. So this guy had to have something to do with it, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I was all for Condit at the beginning. You know, definitely, like you said, he has motive and things like that. But,
Definitely has motive, but this guy here's got the MO also.
and doing basically the same thing, other than he didn't kill these women, but he held a knife to their neck.
Yeah, and you know how this kind of stuff goes. A lot of times with these kind of guys, it starts off with assaults, and then it escalates to a murder.
Well, I think Chandra was before them, but he may have murdered Chandra because he panicked, and in the other ones, he may have just taken off.
Right.
I mean,
there's a good potential for that as well.
May have murdered Chandra on accident. Who knows? But, on March 3rd of 2009, the Superior Court of Washington, D.C. issued an arrest warrant for Gandike, and he was returned to the custody of the D.C. Department of Corrections on April 20th via the Federal Transfer Center in Oklahoma City. 2 days later, Gandike was charged in D.C. with Chandra's murder, and he was indicted by a grand jury on 6 counts: kidnapping, first-degree murder committed during a kidnapping, attempted first-degree assault, sexual abuse, and first-degree murder committed during a sexual offense, as well as attempted robbery. Now, he pleaded not guilty, of course, at his arraignment, and the trial date was originally set for January 27th of 2010, and his lawyers began to argue that the search of his federal prison cell was outside of the jurisdiction of the court-ordered search. Would not be surprised at all if this was another police mess-up.
Yeah, right? That's unfortunate, too. I mean, there could have been ways to extend the search and encompass this.
Right, and on top of that, there were errors in processing contaminated some of the gathered evidence, so they're not following the proper protocols and things like that, and they're contaminating things. They are not doing what their warrants say they're supposed to. I mean, they're just a mess.
And it wouldn't take you don't even have to be a good lawyer to be able to punch holes into this.
Not at all.
I mean, shit, you and I are not lawyers at all, and we're able to punch in holes into this in my brother's basement during a podcast.
Right.
On October 18th of 2010, jury selection commenced in the Superior Court of the District of Columbia before Judge Gerald I. Fisher. Assistant U.S. Attorney Fernando Sanchez presented the names of potential witnesses for the trial, including FBI agent Brad Garnett and the 2 women whom Gandike were convicted of assaulting. So now they're coming back and being resurfaced and brought back into this. And I got to tell you, that's got to be tough for them.
I would imagine definitely. But they probably want to see, justice for Chandra too. I mean, if they can help, I'm sure they're for it. But at the start of this trial, the prosecution's case was expected to take around 4 weeks, and then the defense was expected to only take 1 day. Man, that's a pretty big discrepancy. But
yeah.
On October 25th and 26th, Haley Schilling and Christy Wieglin testified about being attacked by Gandike while independently jogging in Rock Creek Park. Wieglin recounted that Gandike grabbed her from behind, dragged her down a ravine, and held a knife against her face, like I had said before. So he definitely is capable of doing this. And on October 26th of 2010, Chandra's then 64-year-old father took the stand and basically backtracked on his suspicions of Condit at the beginning. He basically just said that he told authorities during the early years of an investigation that his daughter would have been too cautious to jog in the woods alone, but now that he has been thinking about it, he doesn't really think that that's true. He also said that he told police that his daughter and Condit had a 5-year plan between them to get married. Now, that doesn't really surprise me. He's going to tell her whatever it takes, to keep the affair going, in my opinion.
Of course, yeah. And you see that a lot. You do see that where there's this plan, I'm going to separate from my wife, and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times that doesn't go through.
Oh, and the time comes, just nothing.
On November 1st, Condit testified at the trial and was asked if on 3 occasions if he and Chandra Levy had been involved in a sexual relationship. He replied, "I'm not going to respond to that question out of privacy for myself and Chandra."
Yeah, but what's interesting is the FBI biologist testified that semen was found on underwear from Chandra's apartment that contained some of Condit's sperm on them. So,
well, let's take a minute here, okay? Let's take a minute here on that. They did have a relationship, and here's the thing: if he wasn't sleeping with her, he would have said that. Right?
Oh, yeah. He just didn't want to say it because he didn't want his wife to hear him say the words. He
would have said, if he absolutely 100% did not, he would have said that. But the fact is that he did. And he did before she was murdered at some point, right? And He knew that evidence would most likely be there. He's not an idiot.
That's what I would assume too, yeah.
So he had to say something. So what did he do? He pled the fifth on that, basically.
Basically, yeah. But the prosecution's witness, Armando Morales, who shared a cell with Gandike at Kentucky Penitentiary, testified that Gandike was concerned about being transferred between prisons in 2006 because of inmate violence against suspected rapists. Now, Morales stated that Gandike, a fellow member of the Mara Salvatrucha gang, confided to him that he had killed Levy while trying to rob her, but that he did not rape her. The prosecution rested their case on November 10th while dropping 2 out of the 6 charges against Gandike, sexual assault and murder associated with that assault. Now, I guess they were more than satisfied with getting him for the murder, and they didn't really need the sexual assault, would be my opinion.
Yeah, dropped the lesser of the charges, I guess.
Right.
You can consider it that.
And on November 15th, the defense rested its case without calling Gandike to the stand, pretty common practice. Other prison witnesses called by the defense refuted Morales' testimony. Jose Alanes said that Gandike made no mention of rape or murder while sharing a cell with both Alanes and Morales at the Kentucky Penitentiary, and Alanes admitted under cross-examination that he didn't want to be too nosy and was often asleep at the prison while recovering from a gunshot wound. Then the prosecution dropped 2 more charges because the statute of limitations had passed, the kidnapping and attempted robbery.
There's a statute of limitations on that?
I guess so. I mean, I don't know how, what's this, 10 years maybe?
Yeah, that's interesting, huh? Now, during closing arguments for the remaining charges of first-degree murder committed during a kidnapping and during a robbery, prosecutor Amanda Haynes contended that Gandike bound and gagged Levy after attacking her, leaving her to die of dehydration or exposure in the park. And that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean...
I don't know about that.
The thing with the pants being tied is what I keep going back to. I mean, there's only one reason why you would do that, in my opinion, and that's to strangle somebody. But the defense attorney, Santa Sonnenberg, countered with the lack of any DNA evidence connecting Gandike to the crime scene. Which, is that because of the fact that it was just skeletal remains? I mean, if there was more of her there, they would have maybe found more DNA, but I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably a lot of it was washed away with time.
Right. And she actually calls the prosecution's case fiction, and she suggested that Chandra had been murdered elsewhere, and then her dead body was actually dumped in the park.
I could kind of see that too, maybe.
Yeah, it's hard telling because
it's kind of hard to do.
She's been in the park for over a year, letting the elements and wildlife, I mean...
highly speculative.
Right. Any evidence that was there could easily have been washed away through the winter and the spring and the animals and things like that. Of course, they did search Condit's apartment, so if he was involved, nothing happened to his apartment, they definitely would have found stuff. But
yeah. Now, the jury began deliberations on November 17th of 2010. Scheduled proceedings of the case met delays because of increased security at the courthouse.
Of course.
High-profile
case, things like that.
Now, after 2 days of deliberations, all but one juror had voted to convict Gandike. On the third day, the jury asked the judge to clarify the definition of assault.
Yeah, and he actually responded that any physical injury could legally be considered assault, regardless of how big or small. Now, on November 22nd of 2010, the jury found Gandike guilty of both the remaining counts of first-degree murder. After the trial, a juror said the testimony of Morales was decisive in reaching the verdict.
The conviction was called a miracle, quote-unquote, after having been reached with only circumstantial evidence. But we've seen that before.
Yeah.
Gladys Witherspoon, who had previously represented Gandike in 2001 assault cases, stated that she was troubled by the jury's verdict. She states, "I think they were going to convict him anyway." Of course, she's going to say something like that.
Yeah, they felt bad for Chandra and the mom, and the mother was just sitting there every day. So, she thinks that the jury was just trying to get them some closure. But after the post-trial, Chandra's mom, Susan, said, "There's always going to be a feeling of sadness. I can surely tell you it is not closure. Since the conclusion of the trial, Susan has acted to keep photographic evidence of her daughter's remains sealed from the news media." That makes sense. She doesn't want, the whole world seeing her daughter's remains. It makes sense to me, but...
Yeah, and, she doesn't want to keep seeing them herself.
Right. Now, after the guilty verdict, there's sentencing and appeals and all that.
On February 1st of 2011, Gandike's attorney requested a new trial on the grounds that the verdict had been improperly attained. Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
The 17-page filing claimed that the prosecutor had appealed to the motions of the jury using references of fact and not in evidence. Circumstantial, basically, is what that means.
Right. And the motion also alleged that one juror who did not take notes had breached the judge's instructions not to be influenced by another juror's notes. The prosecution opposed a retrial, arguing that the issue regarding the notes was no more than a technicality that did not have a significant effect on the verdict. I just gotta say, this is kind of funny. This guy obviously was a fucking slacker in high school. He's sitting there through a very high-profile murder charges, and he can't even be bothered to take notes.
Dude, that's me. That's me, man. I would just sit there. No, for real, dude. I know. I would just, I would sit there and I would just listen. I'd be paying more attention to what I'm seeing and hearing, and maybe
fair,
jotting some stuff down, you know. But
I would at least have a notepad and paper and probably be like, "Oh shit, I gotta write that down."
It's like watching court TV, just live.
I think I would have a pros and cons list, and or a guilty not guilty list, I guess you'd say. And if something that was said, I'm like, it's questionable, not guilty.
Yeah.
Okay, that's some pretty serious evidence. Put it on the guilty side, so I'd at least have some reference. But I don't know. That's just laziness to me. But Gandike faced a minimum penalty of 30 years to a maximum of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In seeking the maximum possible sentence, the prosecutors stated that Gandike is unable to control himself and thus will always remain a danger to women. A memo submitted by the prosecution in February of 2011 cited Gandike's harassment of female staff in prison, including soliciting a nurse and masturbating in front of guards. Oh, I would do that in prison.
Yeah, well, you got plenty of time to do whatever you want.
Oh, not only that, but especially as a rapist, you want to be in solitary confinement. You don't want to be amongst the general population. So
that's true.
I would be whacking off and getting sent to the hole every day if that's what it took to get away from people.
I don't want to bunk with you, Jason.
No, you don't.
Assistant U.S. Attorney Fernando Sanchez disclosed that he had traveled to El Salvador with a detective to investigate allegations that Gandike had fled his native country because of suspected attacks against local women dating back to 1999. During the sentencing hearing on February 11th, Gandike said to Levy's family, quote, "I'm sorry for what had happened to your daughter," and insisted of his innocence.
Yeah. He obviously has a background of doing this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Whether he did it to Chandra or not, who knows? But if he fled his country because he was assaulting women, and then he comes here and he's assaulting women in the same park that her body's found, I mean, it seems very, very convenient at the very least. But the judge actually reminded Susan Levy to address the court instead of the defendant in her closing statements. But she actually said to Gandike, "Did you really take her life? Look me in the eyes and tell me." Now, the judge denied Gandike's motion for retrial and handed down a sentence of 60 years in prison, stating that he will be a danger for some time because he is a sexual predator. And I would agree with that. Whether he did Chandra or not, who knows? But he's clearly shouldn't be on the streets, in my opinion.
My thought is that, and I agree with you, man. Totally agree with you. But whether he did or not, he's on trial for this one particular case. You gotta take it case by case.
Yeah.
Is this guy a piece of shit? Yes.
Right, absolutely.
Absolutely. I really don't, guys that attack women is just something that I hate. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But still, you gotta take it case by case.
Right, I agree. And on February 25th of 2011, a public defender named James Klein filed an appeal on Gandike's conviction with the D.C. Court of Appeals. In December 2012 and January 2013, a set of secret hearings was made known to the public, but the subject of the meetings was sealed by the judge. After a third hearing in February, the judge in the case unsealed transcripts from the previous hearings, which revealed that Klein was seeking a new trial based on new evidence in the case. A fourth hearing was then later scheduled for April of 2013. And here's where stuff gets very interesting.
Yeah, what's up? On May 22nd of 2015, prosecutors dropped their opposition of a new trial. This came largely due to defense claims that the prosecution's star witness, Armando Morales, had perjured himself on the stand.
From what I had heard about this is that he became friends with a woman and started helping her out with stuff like that, and he kind of mentioned about how he was the star witness in that case, and she kind of was realizing that his stories weren't adding up. So she had asked this Morales to go to her storage unit with her and help her organize some things. Now, while she did this, she set up some recording audio. And he ended up, like, telling 4 different stories of what had happened. And she turned it over to the prosecution, basically saying that your star witness is a liar, or at least can't keep his story straight. Yeah. So that's why they had dropped this contention of the retrial. But the defense contended that prosecutors failed to disclose that Morales was a jailhouse informant with a reputation of being untrustworthy. He denied ever being an informant in general. So
very wishy-washy.
He said, she said type of stuff, I guess. But the defense also argued that Morales made up Gindike's confession in order to boost his stock with prosecutors. Now, on January 3rd of 2015, the defense said a new witness, who was a neighbor of Chandra, called 911 at 4:37 a.m. on the last day that Chandra was alive to report hearing a blood-curdling scream, possibly coming from her apartment.
On June 4th, 2015, Judge Gerald Fisher granted a motion for the new trial. On June 12th, 2015, Judge Robert E. Morin set the retrial on Gindike to be set for March 1st of 2016. But in March, the trial date was moved to October 11th of 2016, so things are getting pushed back.
Right. And in November of 2015, prosecutors told the D.C. Superior Court judge that their office failed to turn over documents to the defense before the defendant's first trial. That's a big no-no.
Yeah.
You got to make sure the evidence is there to be disputed and things like that.
Got to be out.
On July 28th of 2016, prosecutors announced that they would not proceed with the case against Gindike and would instead seek to have him deported. He was in the country illegally, so according to the Washington Post, prosecutors lost confidence in the case after learning that Morales, who now lives in Maryland, was secretly recorded, like I said, admitting lying on the witness stand.
Totally messed up.
Yeah, so this begs the question, do you think this case is ever truly going to be solved, or do you think it maybe was Gindike all along?
You know what, this is my full thoughts on this, right? Okay, to kind of encompass the whole story here. She had an affair with the congressman, right? And I think it's real easy to, at first glance, point the finger at him.
As many times as I read about this case, I thought that he was guilty
in the early going,
all along, until the more you learn about Gindike, he does what happened to Chandra to these other women, other than killing them.
Right. I think what it is what paints that doubt is because, his semen was found with her, but they were having an affair together.
Yeah,
so
of course.
That explains that.
My other thing, though, is he was having an affair with the flight attendant as well.
Yeah, and she didn't get murdered.
But maybe Chandra was getting in the way of him being with this flight attendant. I mean...
Or maybe Chandra was threatening to say something to his wife. We don't know.
Right,
we don't
exactly.
know. But Gindike has a history of doing things like this.
He does.
And now I think it's just a matter of maybe Chandra was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And what makes it hard is all the conspiracy, just because of all the other evidence that kind of points towards Condit. But I don't think he had anything to do with any of this.
I don't either, and I definitely don't think he paid Gindike. If Gindike did it, he did it on his own. Because in order for Condit to have paid Gindike, there's going to have to be a much bigger cover-up. It can't just be those two. Then you got to...
Yeah, I mean, you got to consider a financial cover-up. It isn't like it was $25 that were in question. It's $25,000 in question.
Right, that money's going to show up somewhere or in some documentation.
Oh, yeah, dude.
The police force would have to have been paid off. I mean, they made a ton of mistakes in this case, but it's not like you can just pay off one cop to mess things up. I mean, there's a lot of errors. You're probably talking about, government cover-ups and things like that as well. I mean, I think that the bottom line is that this is probably more likely than not Gindike.
Yeah, and Chandra was just at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So what do you think, man?
I think that pretty much does it.
Did we solve this case? Did we solve it here in the basement?
I don't think so. I think it's been solved before.
I think you're right. But definitely an interesting story.
Definitely an interesting story. A lot of conspiracy, a lot of potential. But I think that Occam's razor, the simplest answer is probably the answer.
I'd say so. Let us know what you guys think. You can shoot us an email at therigamortispodcast@gmail.com.
And also the Rigor Mortis podcast at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And also our personal Instagrams. Mine is Rigor Mortis _JLEW.
And you can find me at Dr. Skellyfingers. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for sharing with a friend. And we look forward to touching base with you next week.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.